How wealthy did someone have to be in the 1950s to look at a Rolls-Royce and think there was still something even more exclusive? Because in that decade, European luxury wasn't just about price. It was about belonging to a different world. A world where some automobiles weren't built to sell in large numbers or to attract attention on every street corner. They were built for people who never needed to explain who they were. Kings, diplomats, machines created for an elite that wanted comfort, power, exclusivity, and a level of class that very few modern automobiles can still convey. Leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and let's begin with a very special Bentley, the 1958 Bentley S1 Continental. This Bentley wasn't created for someone who wanted to display wealth at the entrance of a luxury hotel. It was created for someone who wanted to leave that hotel, quietly close the door, head south toward the French Riviera, and cross Europe without ever raising their voice. Because the Bentley S1 had a very different idea of luxury. It wasn't a limousine meant to be enjoyed from the rear seat, looking out at the world from an enormous back seat. Nor was it a loud, theatrical sports car. It was something much rarer, a top-tier grand tourer, built to travel fast, comfortably, and with such understated elegance that it seemed reserved only for those who truly understood what they were looking at. And that makes it the perfect way to begin this list. During the 1950s, Bentley lived in the shadow of Rolls-Royce. Many models shared engineering, structure, and philosophy. But the Continental was different. It had a far more driver-focused personality. It was the Bentley for someone who wanted luxury, yes, but also wanted to feel that the car still had the soul of a true grand tourer. The Continental wasn't sold like an ordinary automobile. Bentley supplied the chassis, and then some of Britain's greatest coach builders, including H.J. Mulliner, Park Ward, and James Young, took over. That meant every example had its own unique character, almost as if it had been custom built. It wasn't simply mass production, it was handcrafted luxury. Inside, the atmosphere was exactly what you'd expect from a great Bentley of the 1950s. Fine leather, polished wood, understated instrumentation, and a cabin designed for effortless long-distance travel. But unlike a more formal Rolls-Royce, this Bentley seemed to say something different. And that exclusivity is reflected in its production numbers. Only around 431 Bentley S1 Continentals were built across all body styles. For a European luxury car of the 1950s, that was already exceptionally rare. But once you separate the different coach builders, body styles, specifications, and surviving examples, each car begins to feel almost one of a kind. Today, a well-preserved 1958 Bentley S1 Continental is typically worth between $250,000 and $450,000, while exceptional examples, especially rare coach-built coupes or convertibles, can easily exceed $600,000 or even $700,000. 1951. Mercedes-Benz 300 Adenauer. This Mercedes didn't look like an ordinary luxury car. It looked like a state automobile. Known as the Adenauer, this car had a presence unlike almost any other European luxury automobile of the 1950s. It wasn't sporty, flashy, or youthful. It was large, serious, formal, and deeply imposing. Exactly the kind of automobile you imagine arriving in front of a government building, chauffeur-driven, with the doors opening slowly, as an important figure steps out without saying a word. After the war, Mercedes-Benz needed to rebuild not only its factories, but also its reputation. The 300 was its answer. Germany could still build a luxury automobile at the very highest level. Its design was elegant, but carried an almost political sense of authority. The upright grille, the long hood, the pronounced fenders, and the tall body conveyed stability and power. It didn't have the lightness of an Italian grand tourer or the flowing elegance of a Rolls-Royce. It had something else. Respect. Inside, the Adenauer offered exactly the kind of luxury that mattered during that era. Generous space, leather upholstery, fine wood trim, remarkable quietness, and a feeling of exceptional craftsmanship. It was designed to travel comfortably, but it was also designed to represent status. It wasn't just transportation, it was public image. Under the hood was a 3-liter inline-six, producing between 115 and 125 horsepower in the early versions. It wasn't an overwhelmingly powerful engine, but it was smooth, refined, and perfectly suited to moving such a large automobile with dignity. The nickname Adenauer was no accident. The model became closely associated with Konrad Adenauer, the Chancellor of West Germany, who used several Mercedes 300 sedans as official state cars. That transformed the automobile into a symbol of power, reconstruction, and German prestige. And that history still adds to its appeal today. A well-preserved 1950s Mercedes-Benz 300 Adenauer is typically worth between $70,000 and $150,000, depending on the version, originality, and restoration quality. Exceptional examples, particularly rarer body styles and convertibles, can easily exceed $200,000. 1955 Rolls-Royce Silver Cloud I. This car didn't need to look powerful. It simply had to look inevitable. This automobile was the purest expression of British luxury during the 1950s. While the Bentley S1 Continental had the spirit of a grand tourer, the Silver Cloud was something entirely different, more formal, quieter, and more ceremonial. It was the kind of car that didn't arrive quickly. It arrived with presence. Introduced in 1955, the Silver Cloud replaced the Silver Dawn and marked a new chapter for Rolls-Royce. Its styling was more modern than its predecessors, while preserving the timeless elegance that made every Rolls seem perfectly at home outside an embassy, a palace, or the entrance of a five-star hotel. The body was long, clean, and beautifully proportioned. The iconic front grille remained imposing, while the rest of the car displayed a much more refined sense of grace. It wasn't excessive, it wasn't trying to be sporty. Its luxury was found in its serenity, and inside, everything reinforced that feeling. Fine leather, polished wood, thick carpets, generously sized seats, and a cabin designed to isolate its occupants from the outside world. In a Silver Cloud, the journey mattered just as much as the destination, perhaps even more. Under the hood was a 4.9-liter inline-six, producing approximately 155 horsepower, paired with a 4-speed automatic transmission. It was an engine designed to deliver effortless smoothness, near silence, and a feeling that the car was never working hard. No drama, no loss of composure. The Silver Cloud I was produced in relatively limited numbers by normal automotive standards, although it wasn't exceptionally rare within the Rolls-Royce world. Even so, every example carried an aura of exclusivity that very few manufacturers could match. Today, a well-preserved Rolls-Royce Silver Cloud I is typically worth between $40,000 and $90,000. Exceptional examples, long wheelbase models, or cars fitted with special coachwork can easily exceed $150,000, while some of the rarest variants are worth considerably more. Before we continue, let me know in the comments, if you could choose a European luxury car from the 1950s to arrive at an elegant event, would you choose this Rolls-Royce Silver Cloud I, the Bentley S1 Continental, or the Mercedes-Benz 300 Adenauer? Leave your answer in the comments, because the next car completely changes the tone. 1958 Facel Vega Excellence. This car didn't look traditionally French. It looked like a European limousine created by someone who wanted to combine Paris, Hollywood, and Detroit into a single automobile. The Facel Vega Excellence was one of the most extravagant and exclusive luxury sedans in Europe during the 1950s. It didn't have the restraint of a Rolls-Royce or the formality of the Mercedes Adenauer. Its luxury was more theatrical, more exotic, more unexpected. Facel Vega was already known for building elegant, expensive, and highly handcrafted grand tours, but with the Excellence, the company pursued something even more ambitious, creating a French luxury sedan capable of competing with the finest automobiles in the world. Visually, it was impossible to ignore. The body was long, low, and exceptionally elegant, with an imposing front end, generous chrome trim, and a clean side profile that gave it an almost presidential appearance. But its most striking feature was the doors. The Excellence featured rear-hinged rear doors and no visible center pillar, creating an enormous and spectacular entrance into the cabin. With all 4 doors open, it looked less like an ordinary automobile, and more like a private luxury suite on wheels. Inside, the luxury followed the same philosophy. Leather upholstery, fine wood trim, elegant instrumentation, and the atmosphere of a French grand tourer combined with the spaciousness of a limousine. It was built for customers who wanted something more exclusive than a Jaguar, less predictable than a Mercedes, and far rarer than a Rolls-Royce. The Excellence was powered by large displacement Chrysler 5.8 engines, delivering strong, smooth, and effortless performance. Depending on the version, output exceeded 250 horsepower, an impressive figure for a European luxury sedan in the late 1950s. That gave it a unique personality. It wasn't just an elegant sedan. It was a large, handcrafted French luxury sedan with an American heart. Production was extremely limited. Fewer than 160 Facel Vega Excellence models were built in total, making it one of the rarest European luxury automobiles of its era. Today, a well-preserved Facel Vega Excellence is typically worth between $180,000 and $350,000, while exceptional, highly original, or concours quality examples can exceed $400,000. 1958 Jaguar Mark IX. This Jaguar didn't have the absolute formality of a Rolls-Royce, nor did it possess the political authority of a Mercedes-Benz Adenauer. It was British luxury with a bit more character. A large, elegant, aristocratic sedan, but with mechanical engineering that reminded everyone Jaguar didn't build cars just to arrive in style. It also built cars to make the journey enjoyable. Visually, the Mark IX displayed the classic presence of Jaguar's great post-war sedans. An upright grille, rounded fenders, a tall roofline, imposing proportions, and a body that looked perfectly at home, parked outside a private club in London. It wasn't radically modern, it was traditional, but exceptionally well executed. Inside, the atmosphere was exactly what you'd expect from a luxury Jaguar of the 1950s. Leather upholstery, polished wood, thick carpets, and a dashboard filled with elegant instruments. Everything reflected that uniquely British combination of comfort, understated sportiness, and prestige. But what made the Mark IX truly interesting was that it wasn't satisfied with simply looking luxurious. Under the hood was Jaguar's famous 3.8 liter XK inline-6, producing approximately 220 horsepower. For a large luxury sedan, that was a very respectable figure. It also featured four-wheel disc brakes and power steering, details that made it significantly more advanced and more enjoyable to drive than many rivals that cost considerably more. It could reach approximately 112 miles per hour, an impressive top speed for a luxury sedan of its size and class. Just over 10,000 units were produced between 1958 and 1961, making it far less rare than a Facel Vega Excellence, but still a very special classic thanks to its combination of presence, comfort, and performance. Today, a well-preserved Jaguar Mark IX is typically worth between $30,000 and $70,000, depending on its condition, originality, and restoration quality. Exceptional examples with outstanding provenance or preservation can exceed $90,000. 1958 Maserati 3500 GT. This Maserati didn't look like a car meant to be chauffeur-driven. It looked like a car built for someone who wanted to take the wheel, leave the city behind, and cross Italy in complete elegance. The 3500 GT represented a very different interpretation of European luxury during the 1950s. It wasn't a limousine, it wasn't a presidential sedan, and it wasn't trying to compete with a Rolls-Royce in absolute silence. Its luxury was more emotional, more Italian, more closely connected to speed, design, and that unmistakable sense of exclusivity that only a true grand tourer could offer. Introduced in the late 1950s, became one of Maserati's most important models because it helped transform the company into a manufacturer of highly desirable road cars. Until then, Maserati had been known primarily for racing. With this automobile, it proved that it could also build a refined, elegant grand tourer for affluent customers looking for something more special than a Jaguar or a Mercedes. The body, especially the touring-bodied coupe, featured clean, beautifully balanced styling, a long hood, an elegant cabin, a low roofline, and a flowing side profile created a design that didn't rely on excess. It looked expensive because of its proportions, because of its stance. Inside, it offered leather upholstery, sporting instrumentation, quality materials, and an atmosphere that felt much more intimate than that of a traditional luxury sedan. It was designed for fast, comfortable touring, a car for two important people, light luggage, and a long road ahead. Under the hood was a 3.5-liter inline-six derived from Maserati's racing experience, producing approximately 220 horsepower in its early versions. That allowed it to reach approximately 137 miles per hour, an impressive figure for a European Grand Tourer of the late 1950s. And that was its greatest appeal. It was refined, but it still had true sporting blood. Today, a well-preserved Maserati 3500 GT Coupe is typically worth between $180,000 and $300,000, depending on its originality, history, and restoration quality. The much rarer Spider versions can easily exceed $700,000, with exceptional examples approaching $1 million. Before we continue, let me know in the comments, do you think this Maserati represents European luxury better than a Rolls-Royce precisely because it combines elegance with performance? Leave your answer in the comments. 1955 Alfa Romeo 1900 Super Sprint. This car didn't represent luxury the way a Rolls-Royce did. It wasn't large, it wasn't limousine quiet, and it certainly wasn't designed to be enjoyed from the rear seat. The 1900 Super Sprint represented a different kind of European luxury. Lighter, more handcrafted, and far more emotional. It was luxury for someone who wanted more than comfort. They wanted style. During the 1950s, Alfa Romeo still carried a remarkably refined image. The company came from racing, sophisticated engineering, and an Italian tradition where design and mechanics went hand in hand. The 1900 was important because it brought that identity to a more usable road car. But the Super Sprint versions elevated the formula to an entirely different level, especially when coach builders like Touring became involved. The Super Sprint's body featured beautifully balanced proportions, a long hood, a low roofline, flowing curves, and an elegance that didn't need sheer size to command attention. It was a compact coupe, but it was expensive, refined, and built with a level of craftsmanship that completely separated it from an ordinary automobile. It wasn't ostentatious, it was sophisticated. Inside, the atmosphere was more sporting than ceremonial. Leather seats, clear instrumentation, an elegant steering wheel, and a cockpit designed for someone who genuinely enjoyed driving. It wasn't a private drawing room on wheels like a Rolls-Royce, but it still carried that unmistakable feeling of being something truly special, created for someone with taste and a genuine appreciation for fine engineering. Under the hood was a 2-liter twin-cam inline-4, producing approximately 115 horsepower. That may not sound impressive compared to the larger engines on this list, but the Alfa was considerably lighter and more agile. It could approach 112 miles per hour, an excellent figure for a compact Grand Tourer of the mid-1950s. Today, a well-preserved Alfa Romeo 1900 Super Sprint is typically worth between $250,000 and $450,000, depending on its coach builder, originality, and documented history. 1956 BMW 503. This car didn't seem to come from the same company that would later dominate the world of sports sedans. It looked like it came from a very different BMW, more aristocratic, more handcrafted. The 503 was born during a difficult period for the company. Germany was still rebuilding. Mercedes-Benz had already established a commanding position in the European luxury market, and BMW needed to restore its prestige. Its answer wasn't a small, affordable automobile. It was an expensive, elegant, and highly exclusive Grand Tourer. Visually, it possessed understated beauty, long, low by the standards of its time, with clean proportions and bodywork that looked far more modern than BMW's larger sedans from the early 1950s. It didn't have the drama of the 507, but it offered something the 507 could not: more space, more comfort, and a more mature personality. It was a car built to travel in style, not to make noise. Designed by Albrecht von Goertz, the body combined graceful lines with BMW's signature twin-kidney grille. As a coupe, it looked like the perfect Grand Tourer for crossing Europe. As a convertible, it gained even greater presence, becoming one of the most refined and expensive open-top automobiles of its era. Inside, the 503 followed the same philosophy: leather upholstery, high-quality craftsmanship, a comfortable 2+2 cabin, and an atmosphere that felt more exclusive than overtly sporting. It wasn't a limousine like the Mercedes-Benz Adenauer, but neither was it a pure sports car. Its greatest exclusivity, however, lay in its production numbers. Between 1956 and 1959, BMW built only 413 examples of the 503, including both coupes and convertibles. Of those, just 139 were cabriolets. Today, a well-preserved BMW 503 is typically worth between $150,000 and $300,000, depending on the version, condition, and restoration quality. Cabriolets and exceptional concours-level examples can exceed $400,000. 1953, Lagonda 3 Litre. This Lagonda wasn't the most famous car on this list, and that's exactly what makes it so interesting. The 3 Litre represented a distinctly British interpretation of luxury, understated, refined, and built for a buyer who didn't need the most recognizable badge to feel important. It didn't have the monumental presence of a Rolls-Royce. It didn't have the Italian glamour of a Maserati, but it had class, a quiet, reserved kind of class, as if it had been created for a gentleman who preferred to arrive without turning every entrance into a spectacle. To truly understand this car, it's important to remember that Lagonda was already under the ownership of David Brown, the same group that also controlled Aston Martin. That gave the model a very special place within British luxury. It wasn't simply another traditional sedan, it was an automobile with a direct connection to fine engineering, elegance, and the spirit of a true grand tourer. The styling was restrained and distinguished. The body featured flowing lines, an elegant grille, and formal proportions without appearing heavy. Inside, the atmosphere followed the classic British formula: wood trim, leather upholstery, high-quality craftsmanship, and a sense that every detail had been carefully considered. It wasn't an extravagant interior, it was refined through subtlety, creating the feeling of a car built for unhurried journeys, quiet conversations, and effortless drives through the English countryside. Production remained very limited, with only a few hundred examples built, making it far rarer today than many Jaguars, Mercedes-Benz models, or Rolls-Royces from the same period. Today, a well-preserved Lagonda 3 Litre is typically worth between $60,000 and $120,000, depending on its body style, originality, and restoration quality. Open-top versions, exceptionally well-preserved examples, or cars with notable provenance can command even higher prices. And in the end, that was the true meaning of European luxury during the 1950s. It wasn't just about price, not just leather, not just polished wood. It was the feeling of stepping into an automobile and immediately realizing it had been built for an entirely different way of life. Now I'd like to hear your opinion. Which of these European cars from the 1950s best represents luxury to you? The Rolls-Royce, the Bentley, the Mercedes? Or would you choose something rarer, like the Facel Vega or the Lagonda? Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this journey through European luxury of the 1950s, be sure to watch the video now on the most elegant European cars of the 1960s. Because in the following decade, luxury began to change, and some of those automobiles became true masterpieces of elegance on wheels. See you in the next video.